We'll now discuss administrative type items in the PTCS registry. Section 3 focuses on administrative type work in the PTCS registry. We'll go through certification basics, entering a job into the registry, and the new mobile device entry that's available. We'll talk about documentation and utility follow-up, quality assurance, and finish up with program resources. Certification need-to-knows. It's a good idea to regularly check your certifications because you must have a technician on staff that's certified in the measure or the measures being installed. For example, the PTCS program has a duct seal measure and an air source heat pump measure, and depending on what measure is being installed, you must have a technician on site that's qualified to install that measure. And if for some reason at a job site you're doing duct sealing, but they also had an air source heat pump installed, and the one technician you had on site was only certified with the air source heat pump measure, they cannot certify the duct seal portion of that project. So you may need to have that technician have both certifications or have two different technicians on that site. Because with the duct seal measure, the technician must test and approve the final installation. The technician doesn't have to be at the job the whole entire time, and they don't have to physically do all the sealing, but they must look over the system at the end and make sure everything was done to the PTCS specifications, and they must test in at the beginning of the job, and they must test out at the end of the job to make sure they got enough reduction. And that process would be slightly different with the prescriptive duct seal job since testing is not required. There is no requirement at the moment to regularly renew your certification. So once a technician is trained and gains a PTCS certification, they keep that for their career. But at some point, we may start requiring continuing education to maintain certification in the future, so stay tuned for that. Another important certification item is that the certification will follow the tech to any company. And that's because the technician themselves is actually getting certified, and the certification is tracked by their name, and it's not the company getting a certification. So something to be aware of if you have a technician or a couple of technicians that decide to move to a different employer or move to a different industry, and you might need to have some kind of interim solution figured out. We have a lot of companies that have a sales staff or one of the owners has the PTCS certification, and that works out just fine, but this means that they actually have to make it out to each one of the duct seal projects to do the testing and the final approval on the job. The image here describes the process that a PTCS tech or an installation would follow as it works its way through the process, starting with getting the technician certified, followed up by the installation and commissioning of the equipment or the duct seal project. But where we're going to jump in today and with this section is with entering data into the online registry. And then that's followed up with submitting any documentation to the utility and followed up by a potential quality assurance visit. There are a couple different methods for entering a job into the online PTCS registry. The first method is using a mobile device to enter in the data while you're on site. This is the recommended method and brand new for 2018. The beauty of this is that it can be performed while the technician is on site collecting the data and can actually eliminate the need for the paper installation form. So instead of jotting the information down on the paper form, you just punch it right into the online registry right there. The other option that's been around for quite some time is the computer entry method, and this would be entering the data on a desktop or laptop computer away from the site after the job is complete. This can be performed by an administrative staff or the technician, but you do need some sort of installation form to be able to record the data from the job site on to then transfer into the registry when you get back to a computer, which can cause a couple of extra steps of work. So that's why the mobile entry method is definitely preferred, because it helps streamline the whole process. But one item to keep in mind here is there are several utilities that still require the paper installation form regardless of if you're using the mobile entry method or not, because they require this paper installation form to be submitted to them once the job is complete. And so just keep that in mind. So if you are going to be using the mobile entry method to help streamline, there is a chance you may still need the paper form. So definitely double check with your utility to make sure you have those bases covered. So here's a little bit more info on the mobile device entry into the PTCS registry. It's not an app you have to download. Rather, the online registry has been optimized for use with any mobile device with internet access, and that could be Wi-Fi or a cellular data signal. So whether you were using a smartphone or a tablet, when you were on site, if you had some kind of cellular or Wi-Fi signal, you could go ahead and access the registry directly. And it's nice because you can save progress of the job you're working on and come back to it at a later time. So for example, in the morning, you wanted to go ahead and get the 2 or 3 sites created that you were going to be working on over the next day or two. They're created in there. You've already entered the address, some of the home details. And so then when you're there on the site and you're actually collecting your duct seal data, like your duct blaster numbers, for example, that job is already created for you, and you can go ahead and just start entering in the specific job site info right there. So you aren't fumbling around with creating the site while you're there at the job site. You've taken care of it early. If you do not enter any data in and you're inactive on that site after 4 hours, it's going to go ahead and time you out. So it's good when you're in there working on it just to go ahead and save pretty frequently. And it's pretty self-explanatory. There's informational bubbles that will pop up and kind of describe what the different fields are that you need to fill out. So there's not a lot of learning curve here. It's a pretty easy system to use. But there are a few limitations, and the biggest is you have to have some kind of Wi-Fi or cellular data connection or it won't work, because you're going to be directly accessing the registry, so you need to be connected. So as a backup, it's good to have some of the paper installation forms handy. So in case you were in a bad cell signal and there was no way to connect any Wi-Fi, you could still go ahead and record all the data from that site on the paper installation form. And then when you get back to a connection, you can go ahead and enter that job in, or maybe just wait until you get back to the office and use a desktop computer. In order to help learn how the mobile device entry works a little bit better, BPA created a test environment for folks to be able to get on here and punch in a job and see how the whole process works. And there is a link there to access the test environment. And just as a reminder, when you're on the test environment, when you're creating a site, nothing will be published live, so there's no worry about that. And you have to sign in. You can see there in the image on the bottom left, when you log into the test environment, you'll see in red it'll list test, so you know you're not actually on your PTCS profile. And you're going to click login. And once you click that, it's going to bring up some fields for username and password. And just use this stock username and password, not your normal PTCS login username and password. So make sure you use the capital T and the capital C in test contractor and punch in the password. So once you're logged in to the test environment, you can go ahead and create a project. And as you can see there in the image on the bottom, there's a couple of different methods. The first is in the bottom left there. You can just click on Enter a Project, or you can also access it by clicking on Contractors there on the right, and there a little drop-down menu will appear, and you can click on Enter a Job. So once you're in the site entry menu, you have to go ahead and create the site and enter an address, and you will have to use a real physical address for the test environment because the registry does validate any addresses to make sure it's like a real physical address. So you can use your office address or someone's home address just as a test. And then it's going to ask you a series of questions about the site. For example, the square footage and the number of stories and the type of heating system and that sort of thing. So go ahead and just answer those as you see fit. You can just make up whatever because this is just kind of a fake site in the test environment. But one thing to keep in mind is when you're going to be entering any test data about the duct blaster test, you have to actually use real values because the registry is able to compare the ring, the fan pressure, and the CFM to make sure they line up with duct blaster tables and that they're real numbers. And if they aren't real numbers, it's going to tell you they aren't, and it's not going to let you continue. So to make it easy on you, we went ahead and just gave you a couple examples to use. And this will help just speed up the process. So you can just get through all the different questions on the mobile device entry and get familiar with it, because this last thing you want to do is to be out on a job site and finishing up the duct sealing or doing your test in or doing your test out and trying to figure out how the mobile device entry works. It's going to be better just to try it out on this test environment, and then when you get out to the actual job site, it goes pretty smooth and everybody's pretty familiar with it. And if you're not going to be using the mobile device entry and going to be using a desktop or a laptop computer, here's a high-level process of how you do that. Most of you are probably fairly familiar with this because this has been the method for quite some time. But there's a link there to log in to the technician account. And you're going to need to go ahead and set up this site. So there's a couple different ways. As you can see in the image there, on the left, you can click on Enter a Project, or you can hover over the contractor icon, and you can then choose from the drop-down menu, and you can select Enter a Job. And the data entry is very similar to the mobile device entry. You're basically just going to enter in a real physical address. You're going to enter in any site details, the measure type, that sort of thing. And we do have a step-by-step guide that takes you through all these individual steps, has screenshots, makes it very easy to understand. And there's a link there that takes you to that, and it can walk you through. So I want to bring your attention to a couple of important documents here. One is this registry installation report. This report can be accessed on the BPA website. There's a link there for you. And then what you're going to do is you want to go ahead and log in to your account, whether it's a technician account or a company's admin account. And once you're logged in, you're going to go ahead and search for a completed job. And you're going to go ahead and enter in the address. And it'll bring up an address that matches that. And it'll bring up the measure ID. And then you can go ahead and click on that. And once you're in the site, you're going to be able to open up this registry installation report. And what this document is a digital printout of all the data that was entered into the registry for that job, and it's going to closely mimic the paper installation form. So it's basically just taken all the data entry that was done on the registry, compiling it into a 2-page document, and making that available to print out. And the main reason we're going over this is because if the company or the technician is using the mobile device entry method, they're not going to have a paper installation form, And so some utilities will allow this registry installation report to be submitted in lieu of a hand-filled out paper installation form. So this is just one little item that can kind of help you out, and a good way to access and print out any of the information that you've entered in for a job if you don't have any record of it with a paper installation form. And the second document here is the actual paper installation form we've used for quite some time now. We do recommend that you log into the PTCS website and print these out from time to time, because the forms do get changed and they do get updated. So if you have some really old versions floating around, you're going to want to go ahead and get rid of those and print out some new ones, because over time there's definitely been a lot of things changed that help streamline this form quite a bit. It's just less information to fill out. And like we mentioned earlier, this form may still be required by some utility territories, so go ahead and figure out if you need to be filling this out, especially if you're using the mobile device entry. And this form can also come in handy if you don't have any internet access and you're doing the mobile device entry, but while you're on site, you're not actually able to use your smartphone or your tablet to enter the job info in. If you have some of these forms on hand, you can go ahead and jot down all the necessary test data and information needed, and then you can go ahead and enter that into the registry when you get back to a computer, or if you get into a data signal with your smartphone. But regardless of what method you're using to enter data into the online registry, you may encounter issues from time to time, and so we're here to help you troubleshoot any of these entry issues. We've posted the best phone number and contact email there to reach out to the PTCS team, and a few examples of issues you might run into. One is the address isn't validating. Maybe it's a new home, or it's just a home that doesn't come up on any type of mapping software, so the registry is not able to find it. So you can reach out to us if that's the case. Some homes might have 2 duct systems, and that might be eligible for 2 separate duct sealing incentives, and you would need to create 2 different sites for those. And the registry is going to get a little hung up when you're trying to punch in the same address twice, so you can reach out to our team and we can help work through that for you. If you entered a job and you finished or you saved it and you go back in to try to find it later and it's not there, that's another issue you might run into. Reach out to us for that. Or if you realize you finished up a job but you recorded something wrong in the registry, or you accidentally mixed up some site addresses, and you need to get in there and edit it, and it's already been submitted, we can get in there and kind of unlock the project for you so you can go back in and make any kind of edits. And whenever you submit a job on the PTCS registry, if everything checks out in the data you entered, the job is usually going to go straight to an approved status, because the registry is able to check a lot of the fields that you entered in the registry and validate those. And if all the values you entered fall into the ranges that are acceptable, it'll go ahead and approve that job in the system. But if there are some values that just didn't quite line up with what the validation was programmed to be, then it's going to go into this pending status, and it doesn't necessarily mean something was wrong. It just needs an actual PTCS staff to check out that the data entered just to make sure everything looks good, and then push it on through the system. And if for some reason you have a project that's in a bit of a time crunch, you need to go ahead and get the information pushed through and get the incentive processed, and you go ahead and enter the data in and it goes to a pending status, you can always call us and we can immediately review that job for you and go ahead and push it through. Because when jobs are in that pending status, they're reviewed regularly, and it could be in there for a day or two before it gets fully pushed through. So if there is a bit of a time crunch, feel free to reach out to us to take care of that immediately. And there's one common item on the duct seal jobs that we encounter quite a bit in the registry, and it's when the technician or the admin staff is entering in the fan pressure from the duct blaster or the house pressure that was achieved with using the blower door. And a lot of times this value gets mixed up. So we just want to bring to everybody's attention that the fan pressure and the house pressure are two unique numbers, and both of those get entered into the registry. So just make sure you're entering in fan pressure where fan pressure needs to be and house pressure where house pressure needs to be. And because what we'll commonly see is a fan pressure of 50 pascals, and that is the house pressure that we call out as the test pressure for the program. So usually it's a dead giveaway when we see 50 pascals and the fan pressure. So just make sure you're keeping those two items straight there. So there are a variety of document requirements depending on your customer's utility. For example, the registry installation report that we just went through. You may need a contractor invoice. Your utility may still require the installation form and a specific incentive application. Once the duct seal job is finished up in the field and it's been entered into the registry, there's still another step or two that needs to be done before calling this project complete. One of those is notifying the utility of the completed job. This can be done by the technician or another representative from the company, but it's required that you notify the utility that the job is done and that it's been entered into the PTCS registry. And the main reason for this is that the utility is not going to get an automatic notification that there is a new project in the registry. They have to be notified that that's been entered, and from that point they can go ahead and begin the incentive processing process. And like we've said a few times here in the webinar, it's a good idea to contact your customer's utility on any specific information or required paperwork. And often, submitting the paperwork and notifying the utility that the job is done and in the registry can be done in the same step. This may be a phone call, this might be a fax with all the documents, or this could be an email. So it's just good to figure out the best process with your utility and the process that works best for your company. And then once the job is entered and the utility is aware of the job, they can go ahead and get on the registry and review any of the necessary job details to get that job moving forward and to go ahead and process the incentives. Another component of the program are the quality assurance inspections. At least 10% of all the projects submitted to the PTCS program will undergo a quality assurance inspection. We have a number of inspectors that are spread out across the Northwest to cover the whole region. And we try to focus on inspecting the first 3 projects of any new PTCS technician just to make sure they're on the right path and have all the specifications and program requirements down. But after that, it would just be a 10% QA rate. And once a quality assurance inspection takes place, all that inspection feedback will be communicated to that technician and to their company. And this will be in the form of an email, and it'll outline any issues discovered on the job and any return visits or remediation that might be required. And it'll also mention any projects that were just installed exceptionally well. We think it's important here at the program to pass along all feedback that's good or feedback that needs to be addressed. And for technicians that have repeated issues and repeated return visits required, there is a PTCS technician support plan that's been developed to help walk the technician through all the program requirements, figure out the specific issues that aren't being followed, and just help that technician get back on the right foot with the program. Because the end goal is to keep technicians in the program, but we have to ensure that that technician has the ability to be able to install the duct seal measures according to the specifications. The program website can be a valuable resource for staying up to date on the program and having access to all the tools, resources, and materials that a company or a technician needs to be successful in the program. There is a link there to the website, and I'm just going to go through a few of the items that you can find there. One is going to be the specifications. These specifications are included in the binders that the technicians get at the trainings, but in case those get lost or misplaced, then the specifications are easily accessible on the website. There's also any other general program requirements will be listed. There's a variety of technical and training resources. For example, there's some images on how to set up a duct blaster or how to set up the blower door. If a technician, it's been a while since they've done a test and they're going to be going out, it's an easy way to pull up some of those training resources. There are a variety of resources on how to use and interact with the PTCS registry. There is access to any marketing collateral that's available for your use that the program's developed, and we will show that here more in one of the next slides. And then any installation forms that may be required. And it's a good thing to check back pretty periodically for changes in the specifications or specifically with the installation forms. We make it pretty easy to access all these materials, so it's a pretty quick process to get on here and download new forms or check new specifications. The program has created free and customizable marketing materials that are available for contractor use. There is a link there where they can be accessed through BPA's marketing portal. And there's a variety of materials there. One is just a general PTCS logo or a program poster if you were going to be at a home show, for example. But then there are some specific materials just related to duct sealing, an ad, a bill stuffer, a homeowner brochure, a postcard, and even some web banners for your website. There are equipment discounts that have been negotiated with the Energy Conservatory for PTCS technicians and the companies they work for. The discount is 12.5% off of blower doors and duct blasters, and also 12.5% off of digital gauges, also known as manometers from the Energy Conservatory. But there is a process you have to go through to get this discount. You're not going to be able to log right on to the Energy Conservatory website and enter in a coupon code, for example. You do have to go through the program in order to facilitate this discount. But it is a pretty simple process. You just need to email our program manager, Eli Caudill. There is his email address listed there. And he will send you back a form that will itemize the different equipment you'd like to purchase. And from that point, he can go ahead and coordinate in between the Energy Conservatory to get that equipment ordered. Just like keeping up to date on all the specific utility requirements based on the utility territories you work in, it's also a good idea to stay informed with the actual PTCS program, because as the program evolves, the program updates the specifications, the forms, and any other materials related to the program. But we've actually made this really easy for you. One, the website is very easy to navigate and intuitive. But number two is signing up for the quarterly newsletter. You can visit the PTCS website regularly to look for any new information or announcements, but we wrap all this up and send it out quarterly by email in our newsletter. It goes over any updates to the specifications, any changes to the online registry. We'll also go over any common issues we're finding in the field, whether it's with heat pump installations or with duct seal installations. If there's any new program requirements, we'll update folks on those. And if we create any new technical support materials, we send out announcements in the newsletter. And then we also try to just include any tips and tricks that we've come across or would be beneficial to your company to share. And rest assured that your email won't get bogged down with a lot of junk mail. We're just going to send you these 4 newsletters per year, and we will not selling your information or sign you up for any spam mail, so there's no worries there. So there is a link there that you can click on and takes you right to the spot on the website where you sign up for the newsletter, or you could just email the program at that email address and we'll get you signed up there. So there are a handful of program materials that are now available in Spanish. For example, the PTCS technician training slide decks that the trainers use during the technician trainings, those have all been translated into Spanish. Each technician at a training will get a manual that has a printout of all the slides that the trainer goes through and contains a variety of other technical support documents that a technician might need in order to do an installation. There is a test at the end of the technician training to make sure that technician is absorbed and mastered all the ins and outs of installing that measure, and that test has now been translated, and any installation forms that might be used day to day for the program have also been translated. So the best way to have access to any of these materials or to talk about getting some Spanish-speaking technicians certified, reach out to our program manager, Eli Caudill. There is his email there.
So that concludes our webinar today. Thanks to everyone for attending. We have our phone numbers here and the email addresses for the program. Here's kind of a snapshot of the lot of program staff that you may encounter with as you connect with the program. We have Eli Caudill, who is the program manager. I'm Mark Jerome. We've also have Bruce Manclark, who does a lot of trainings and inspections for us. We have Kyle Chase up in the Seattle area, and Eric Timon, who is the program coordinator that kind of keeps everything in line and connects all the dots and moving pieces. Once again, I want to thank you for attending, and thank you very much for your time.